Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. About a year ago, I talked to a young Marine from Magnolia, Delaware, in my district. He had been wounded in Afghanistan and he was home recovering. I called him really just to wish him well and to see how he was doing. And this Marine was not focused on his injuries. All he could think about and talk to me about was getting back to his base. Mr. Speaker, as members of Congress, we need to be worthy of this Marine's sacrifice, his selflessness, and his dedication to fighting for his country. Our nation's most sacred obligation is to care for our men and women in uniform, both when they're serving abroad and when they come back home. Unfortunately, today we're falling short of this duty. Today, about 60,000 veterans are homeless. Close to 13,000 of these are veterans from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. While veterans represent only 7% of the U.S. population, they represent 13% of homeless Americans. These numbers are just unacceptable. That's why I was pleased to join with my colleagues and friends, Mr. Heck and Mr. Renacci, in introducing the Vulnerable Veterans Housing Reform Act of 2013. We're all part of a bipartisan working group that meets a couple times a month, and we've come up with a number of common sense ideas just like that, like this. Mr. Delaney and Mr. Renacci have another bill later on today. Simply put, the Vulnerable Veterans Housing Reform Act ensures that veterans who need and deserve housing assistance get it. Right now, those veterans who are struggling the most, those who are severely disabled and have virtually no income, receive a benefit from the VA to cover the cost of their care. This benefit goes to caretakers who help our veterans with the daily tasks of living, bathing, eating, maintaining prosthetics. The list goes on. However, when these same veterans go to apply for housing assistance from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, this aid counts as income, making it harder for them to qualify for housing assistance. This policy just doesn't make sense, and it's hurting our veterans. H.R. 1742, the Vulnerable Veterans Housing Reform Act, fixes this problem so that our severely disabled veterans aren't victims of homelessness as well. It excludes this aid, meant to address the health and daily living needs of severely disabled veterans, from the calculation of income in the housing assistance program. Mr. Speaker, often when members come in through the doors of the House chambers to vote, we're greeted by members of our military who have been wounded in service of our nation. Most have lost limbs, and all their lives are irreparably changed. Despite all they've already given, these men and women come to our nation's capital to continue giving back and to inspire and thank us. We should thank them. As we approach Veterans Day, I hope the House will honor their sacrifice by passing legislation that will make life just a little easier for those who have given so much to protect ours. I know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle recognize this is a critical issue. A similar version of this bill passed the House by voice vote in the last Congress, and I urge my colleagues to pass this bill once again for the sake of our nation's most vulnerable veterans. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Delaware reserves the balance of his time.